also be a live Q&A. So we're going to save about 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes at the end, and just put your questions in the webinar chat. I'll be keeping my eye out on them, and so we'll be asking some of them at the end. Also, from a camera and audio perspective, don't worry. Only myself, Christopher, and Fred are going to be on camera. You are muted, and this will not be your 15 minutes of fame, unfortunately. So now let's move and let's learn a little bit about our panelists. So today we are going to talk about from passwords to passkeys, what is that the next piece in how we're going to be getting secure access. And the first speaker that I'm going to introduce to you is Fred Rivan. Now, as I introduce both Fred and Christopher, I do want you to see that there are many similarities between them. And I think that's really amazing, particularly because what we're talking about. So first, decades of experience in tech leadership. Here at Dashlane, Fred is really driving innovation here in security and privacy. I think one of the things I really want to point out here, and it's really relevant for both, it's this balance between being very focused on the user experience, both from an administrative perspective as well as that end user, and then how to maintain security. And we see that not only in the impact on the product, but how he runs the company. He is based in New York. And a quick, fast fact about him, he is a barefoot runner. Yes, barefoot in New York. All right, next up we have Christopher. So Christopher, again, decades of experience. And here we're talking about, again, securing access, which is really critical. And his big challenge here is the balance of security and usability. So it's so interesting to see these two CTOs really continue to, to work on those two pieces, which is, I think, is something every organization does. So fast facts about Christopher. So first of all, he's in Stockholm right now, so it's almost the end of his day, so nobody get jealous. And he plays the sax. So we have some similarities and some differences. So why don't we get started first, and let's really talk about why we're here. The fact is, all of us have been typing in passwords forever. I noticed when my now 16-year-old daughter got her first password for her reading app. And it was like, I don't want to give it away, but it was like apple, bear, pear. So this is something that we're growing up with. And right now, on average, people have more than 301 passwords across all of their accounts. Whether you're using a password manager or not, I mean, that is challenging, that is a threat, and that is not something that can stay stable. So this is why right now we want to talk about what's happening in that transition from password to passwordless and what it means to you as a consumer and to you as a business. Great, so why don't we start at the very beginning? Fred, I'm going to ask you a question. First one. So I talked about how passwords are still a risk and how policies haven't really kept up with modern threats. So can you talk about why this is?
Sure, and hi everybody. I'm very happy to be here today, and we have plenty of very interesting thoughts to share with the audience. So I hope you learned something from today. But yeah, that number 301 password on average by everybody, that's crazy. And you can't remember that many complex passwords. If you don't use the password manager, that's even more impossible. There's no way you can do that. And unfortunately, we know that many people still don't use password managers. So that's a big risk for everybody. You will start reusing the same weak, simple passwords, and maybe you have some variation and you are playing with the way you construct your passwords to make them more unique from one to the other. But then there's no way you can do it the right way across those 300 services. And so that's a big risk for everybody. And I'm not even counting the fact that a lot of websites are still forcing you with those constraints of, okay, it needs to be a password with 12 characters and there's some numbers and some symbols and some capital letters and lowercase letters and so on. So we know the password is inherently broken. We know everybody has a level of a reused password, a level of a weak passwords and compromised passwords. So that's why we need to move to something else. That's why we need to move to passkeys, passwordless, and all those new methods of authentication so that we get rid of a broken system in a sense.
So, the move is so important. And one of the things I feel like has been happening already is from a biometrics perspective, we're getting very used to that kind of concept. So I'm curious, Christopher, from your perspective, how is that really sort of impacting consumer and business expectations?
Well, Frederick said something interesting. He said passwordless. And passwordless is a great marketing term because it doesn't mean anything in particular, right? It means not passwords. It doesn't say what it is, it says what it isn't. And lots of people marketed lots of things that were not passwordless, that weren't very safe. So I think that um, looking at the properties you want out of a system for yourself, for your business, et cetera, is really important. And on the phone side of things, what's changed is that now pretty much everyone has something in their possession, a device that can help them with authentication. And biometrics on your devices they're a convenience factor, is the way that we think about them. They're almost always in addition or instead of a PIN or a password to unlock the screen. And in fact, if you reboot your device or if you upgrade it, then you're going to have to re-enter the PIN. And then for a little while, you get to use the convenience of local biometrics. And that's something you can opt into. Very different from centralized biometrics, which has more privacy problems. I know that Frederick and I have very strong preferences about privacy, and we don't want to have central knowledge of people's stuff. But the big change, I think, is that, like Frederick said, passwords used to be something that happened at the end of a spear, quite literally. You would have somebody with a spear challenging you for some word and how you pronounce it, or some secret that you shared with them, shared secret systems, we call them. And it was a stressful situation, and you better say it right. And nothing has changed, except we've tried to make them work with computers, and we've tried to make them work across the internet. And there's lots of challenges there. And so we try to make up for that with things like, character limits and, special characters and all this stuff. And it's just really not something that humans were meant to do. So the nice thing about having a phone around is that regardless of whether you use local biometrics for convenience or not, all of those issues that we've tried to graft onto the shared secret system where humans create and memorize and replay shared secrets is no longer necessary. We can do much better. And that's the reason we created this FIDO standard, this passkey thing. And I think we'll talk more about that in a minute.
Yeah, I love the concept of thinking about our systems, like our human systems as a system. Abracadabra, that was a password at one time. But you mentioned,
Shibboleth back in the biblical days, yeah.
yes, all those. So you mentioned Fido. Let's just take a step back for everyone. So Fred, can you just talk about what is the Fido Alliance and its mission?
Yeah, for those who are not familiar with the Fire Alliance, it's essentially an industry consortium. It was created back in 2012. There are about 500 companies in there from the whole industry. Apple, Google, Microsoft, of course, Dashlane and Yubico are part of the FIDO Alliance. And the goal was really to develop those new authentication standards so that we could eliminate the risk behind the password. So we started working mostly around standards behind multi-factor authentication as a complement to passwords, and more recently around passkeys and passwordless authentication. And really, the whole industry is gathering in those moments to come up with what should be the replacement for those broken systems of passwords. And the main one that is at the heart of all the conversation today is passkeys. It's very simply, in a simple way, passkeys are public key cryptography. You have a private key, a public key, and that's the only thing you exchange with the website to authenticate with the website, which allows you to not have to remember it because it's happening behind the scene between the systems. And also it's phishing resistant. So because you don't know a password, there's nothing to steal, there's nothing to phish, and that really eliminates all the risks associated to passwords today.
Hmm. And so the FIDO Alliance is really a group that's driving all of these new innovations around, how we are able to better protect ourselves. So I know that FIDO 2 was introduced, and that was a game changer. Christopher, could you talk about a little bit about that and really what kind of game did that change?
Yeah, when we first created Fido, it was a Yubico and Google solving a problem that was a Google problem. They wanted some better authentication internally, and together we decided, hey, maybe we can make this something the entire world could use. And the security industry was very focused on something Frederick mentioned around, multi-factor authentication. And this is something I'm a little embarrassed of, having been in the security space for a long time. We do things like, here's a device, and you're going to spend $1,000 on it, and as soon as you do, the security people are going to tell you, well, don't click on that. Why did I buy $1,000 tappy device to not be able to tap on something? That's just crazy. And then we had this mantra around, well, multi-factor, you need something you have, something you know, something you are. And if you don't have at least two of those things, then it's not very good. Well, it turns out that even if you have multi-factor in the form of SMS or an application where you tap yes or tap a number or something, that isn't safe, right? Because you can be phished, you can be tricked. And so the core innovation behind any of this FIDO stuff was, how can we reduce people's cognitive load and help them stay safer at the same time? How can we take this asymmetric cryptography stuff that Frederick talked about? I know we got a general audience today. We can ask more detailed questions later, but how can we take something advanced and that's seen widespread use inside of enterprises and high security and bring it to the whole internet? So the mission was always to make secure login ubiquitous and to make it easy for people. And what FIDO2 did was changed it from something that you used in addition to a password to something that you could use to replace a password. So basically FIDO2, when we first created it, became the first passkey. We didn't have that cool name. Apple gave it a glow up, gave it a cool name not long ago, way better than our original name of FIDO2, about the indiscoverable user verifying credential or something like that. It was just terrible. But passkeys replace passwords entirely, and they do so in a way that continues to reduce that cognitive load, makes it easy for people, and also makes it possible for them to use not just a security key like what we make, but also things that are built into their device depending on their needs. So that was the big game changer. Is FIDO enabled passwordless. It enabled the devices that people already had and served a plurality of use cases, from people that were high risk or at risk to people that were in high security government facilities to people that just want to protect their email.
Yeah. One of the things that comes up when we talk about passkeys is interoperability, and making sure that we can be used everywhere. And so, Fred, I was wondering, could you address that? And if you don't mind us speaking just a little bit more slowly, that would be amazing.
Sure.
Well, when you introduced the both of us, you mentioned the fact that what we were looking for is both convenience and security. And we all know if the product is too complex, if the solution is too complex, we're not going to use it. We need something that's simple, that everybody can use. And when we think about interoperability, of course, I'm on an Android device. Maybe Christopher has an iPhone. You work on your laptop, on the Chrome browser, on Windows, on macOS. So we need all those systems to be compatible with the solutions we use. And that's where interoperability is very important. And in the same way, maybe you store your credentials or passwords in Dashlane and passkeys in Dashlane, or maybe not. Maybe you're using a keychain on Apple or the Chrome Password Manager. You want solutions to be universal. You want them to work across all platforms, all devices. And that's why it's so important for us as an industry, something that's happening through the FIDO Alliance, for instance, to make sure that you, as a customer or as an end user, can use authentication the way you want, everywhere you want. So one good example that came out of this as a standard recently is what we call credential exchange, which is a standard that was pushed through the FIDO Alliance to make sure that you could import and export your credentials outside of one platform to another. It's already available on iOS 26, and now you can import, export passwords and passkeys from Dashlane to Apple, for instance. And then there's more and more people adopting it. It will be available on Android soon and so on. But that's really critical so that the security doesn't add a burden, but it gives you also convenience to do whatever you want as an end user.
Mm-hmm. I do. I think that can be a concern, particularly for consumers, as they start being asked to adopt passkeys. What am I locking myself into or out of? We've announced a partnership. I'm just curious, Fred, Christopher, how do you see the expertise of Yubico from a security piece perspective and Dashlane from a credential and management perspective work together to try to solve this problem?
I can take a first stab there. I mean, Yubico, when we created the FIDO standard, the first FIDO standard, U2F, and we've been working for years ever since to make it broadly acceptable for use, as well as to support the modalities of operation that people expect from their devices. We created a USB device that you touch and it releases a signature which can authenticate you to a site. And in our case, the credentials can't leave the device. And that's a very high security guarantee. But then if you lose them, you end up in a situation where you don't have access and you have to go through some kind of recovery. And that recovery could be painful, it could be slow, it could be unsafe. So we usually recommend people grab a couple of keys to protect their highest value stuff. And then they can use synchronized credentials in something like a password manager or credential manager to access everything else. And that's exactly what I do. This was the key, the actual key I was showing you, I use to log into our corporate systems and to some of our more sensitive things in the company. Another one I use for my personal things, just to keep them separated. There's no requirement to do that. But for the more general use cases, I use a password manager, and I keep the credentials, the FIDO credentials, synchronized in there. So it supports that whole spectrum of threats that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, exactly. And same thing, like the Dashen mission is to protect our end users in everything they do. And there's a spectrum of security and protection, from the lower end where you have the passwords, which we know are inherently insecure, to the higher end, which is security keys, hardware devices that support the credentials. And so Dashen has been offering all the different layers in time, and we've been trying to move from the unsecure passwords. Even though you store them in Dashlane, it's a bit more secure, but you also want to have like more phishing resistant type of authentication mechanism with passwordless. Or if you are very much into the security space, hardware keys to support that passwordless motion. So the fact of having both Yubico and Dashlane coming together to support that very secure part of the spectrum was a great partnership and a great way for us to bring our strengths together around security and convenience together.
Let's talk about threats a little bit. So AI all over the place, of course, but the impact of AI on phishing is been astronomical. Things are looking better when they don't look good. When sites are taken down, they're put back up so quickly. So I was wondering, Fred, could you just talk more about the impact of AI and why it makes passwordless so much more important?
Well, people may not realize, but the statistic is something along the lines of there was a 4,000% increase of phishing attacks since ChatGPT came out, and that's a lot. But also even beyond that, the success rate of these phishing attacks is something around 50% success rate, which used to be before in a old school phishing attack, something around 10-12%, more like what we call a pray and spray attack. You try to attack everybody with fake things and hope that some of it will work. So there's definitely a risk around phishing being powered by AI to be able to craft and automate at scale very sophisticated, very customized attacks. And you can see it like in our own organization. I was recently looking at a thread of emails that was trying to attack our finance team with the right names, the right context. They had used our corporate language and so on in there to try and phish our finance team. So the capability behind AI from an attack perspective are incredible. And unfortunately, back to the point of passwords, I don't think AI is going to be really the defense against those type of attacks. We need to remove the root cause of the attack and the sort of the risk factor, which is the password. That's why the passkey story and the whole passwordless story is so important, even especially in that world of AI-powered phishing attacks.
Christopher, what else should security teams be thinking about on how to be preventing these?
Well, if you look at the demos, they're so impressive, right? I think a lot of the phishing that we were talking about a moment ago is happening via text, and they're happening from usually foreign locations, although there are some specialists that use local language expertise or even kidnap people to phish because it's so effective. But the availability of natural language and then video is huge. We've seen people fool their parents into thinking that it's their children, and this is not even taking advantage of technological illiteracy or maybe cognitive decline in older people. Like I've seen those things over the phone for years with older generation, but we're talking just indescribably good ability to mimic people. Like here, Frederick and I are with our voice and our faces online. Cloning that is so easy now. So I think the advice I would give to people is, first of all, move away from phishing vulnerable methods, because it's not just passwords. It's passwords, it's SMS, it's approval apps, it's all of those things. Because what's happening when the user is logging in is they think they're doing the right thing. So of course they're going to hit yes. Of course they're going to type in that PIN code. Of course they're going to type in that password. We have to deploy FIDO and Passkeys everywhere that we can so that we can help people not make that mistake. But for enterprises, it's all about onboarding and recovery. And onboarding is difficult. You've seen in the news in the USA, people are hiring North Koreans who are doing remote work for them and they don't even know about it, violating sanctions and causing all kinds of trouble. And then recovery, right? Recovery, you want to make recovery appropriately hard. We talk about usability. But the way that you solve that problem is you give people safe recovery options, self-recovery options. So when you have a security key in your, document safe at home, talking first world problems here, but and you have one on your keyring, the likelihood of both of those things disappearing at once is pretty low. But then you also have your device, right, where some of your other passkeys might be held. So losing all three at once, very, very, very rare. So then it's okay to have slightly more friction in that recovery process. And that can also map very easily to people's home situation, where you think about what do you need to be able to do, when do you need to be able to do it, and then like who can help you with that? Like, can you leave a security key with a friend? Where they can't use it, but they can keep it on your behalf in case your house burns down or something like that, so you don't lose everything. So we have to think about those threats on an individual basis for the person or for the organization, and just realize that the world is very different now. You can't rely on a phone call or even a video call to give you confidence.
I'm gonna call an audible here. I'm actually want to talk a little bit more about user experience before we go into security architecture. And I think it would be really good for the audience if we're able to take a step back and let's focus perhaps on some of the people who are just starting to learn about passkeys. Could could Christopher, could you just sort of walk through the process of what happens when you generate a passkey?
Sure. I wish I had my visuals from one of my previous talks here, but I'll see if I can
Picture
talk through
this
it.
team, picture this audience.
Well, let's start with passwords, right? So passwords are something that something creates, right? Your password manager can create it. You can create it in your head, and then you share it with someone. It's that shared secret, and like, how do you share the secret, and what happens if it gets exposed, and what happens if you share it across multiple things. So password managers took that and said, well, we'll generate the passwords for you. We'll store them for you. We'll try and communicate with the website that requires them, or the application that requires them, on your behalf. But there's still essentially this shared secret system. So in the real world, for a very long time, and in fact, we have longer historical records of doing things asymmetrically than we do symmetrically. What I mean by that is, you've seen documents where you have signatures, like ink-based signatures, or stamps in wax, and all kinds of things that are supposedly easier to create than they are on one side, and harder to create on another, versus easier to verify. So it's, if I sign something, it should be easier for somebody else to verify that, but harder for them to fake it. You have signature authentication, you have royal stamps, and rolls that you would use on tablets going back to Sumerian times and many, many thousands of years ago. So you don't have to understand the math to understand what a passkey is, but just recognize that it's asymmetric. And so Frederick said this earlier, the thing that gets sent to the website is public. So even if somebody were to breach that website and get the public key for that website, they don't have your private key. So when that site recovers, they can't log in as you, unless they modified it. Hopefully they're signing those things. And they can't access another site. They can't even know that it's you on another site. So they have privacy built in. They have security built in a way that humans just can't do themselves, because the math and the numbers involved are so large. So there's really just two operations involved when you use passkeys. When you sign up and you create some way to authenticate using a passkey, you create a passkey, and that creates a key pair, and it registers the public key with the website and saves the private key somewhere safe. Could be on a YubiKey, could be in your Dashlane account. And then later, when you authenticate, you get a random challenge from that website. So still not the end of a spear anymore, but you get literally a random number from the website, and it says, hey, sign this with your private key, because nobody else can do that. You sign it and you send it over, and the website validates that against the public key you registered earlier. And if it matches, you're able to be let in. I think I saw a question in the chat about what happens if you share an account with someone. Well, the nice thing about passkeys is that you can register multiple passkeys on an account, unlike a password where you typically only have one. Nothing would stop people from having multiple passwords to an account, but that gets very confusing very quickly. Passkeys made that much easier, so you can have multiple passkeys, multiple YubiKeys, multiple password managers, multiple people with different YubiKeys or password managers, even accessing the same account. So that's the high level.
Great, thank you. I think just want to make sure that we sort of set that stage. There is so much there's so much going on in this market. I think it's important that we level set. So let's just continue down on user experience. So we talked about passkeys and we gave that explanation there. So now when we add in security keys, how are we really going to be balancing the concept of the strong security there, and the cross-platform challenges that we have? So great that we have
Yeah,
this. How do we use it everywhere?
for sure. I think one thing that may not be obvious is that the numbers involved when you use passkeys are so large that you can't really write them down or reasonably make sense of them as a human. At least I can't, or most somewhat average cognitive ability humans can't. So you really need devices to help you with that, like you asked earlier about the smartphones. So security keys are a robust root of trust that's cost effective. You can have multiple of them, and you can register those with your accounts to protect them. The thing that's been changing, I think, is that we're starting to see the adoption of FIDO, WebAuthn, passkeys in more places. So being able to use these in more places means, okay, this is happening at scale. It's happening outside of an enterprise context where you can call up and get help from IT. So we have to focus very carefully on the experience that people are seeing. So there's a lot of attention being paid in the FIDO Alliance and in other organizations and by the platforms, browsers, operating systems, websites about what is the user feedback on this stuff. When we nudge people to create a passkey, do they like that? Do they say never show me it again? Do they complete successfully if they try? So there's a lot of iteration and learning going on there, and there's a lot of attention to detail and the specifics of language, iconography, and flows to make sure that those things are as consistent as they can be. We still got a long way to go, but I think the whole industry is working together to make that better.
Mhm, mhm. Um, I wonder, Fred, could you talk about the actual migration to passwordless?
Yeah, sure.
And I think it would be, and I think one thing is really making it real, um, on like what are those steps that somebody should be doing?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's pretty simple. There are lots of websites today that now support passkeys, and they're in charge of that migration. But if you go, for instance, on Google, if you go on Amazon today, in the settings of your account, you can decide to switch to a passkey. You will just press a button. Probably they will ask you to re-authenticate to make sure that you're you, and then it will generate a passkey behind the scene, but you see nothing. That passkey will be stored either in Dashlane, if you have Dashlane, for instance, on your device. It could be in the if you're on Android, it can be in the Android operating system itself, but you won't see it. It will be there. It will be stored for you on your behalf. But like Christopher was saying, you don't see the passkey. It's something that's behind the scenes. And the next time you come to that website, let's assume I go back to Amazon, it will ask me for my login. I put my username, and then it will ask me for the passkey, but I won't see it. It will just verify that I'm me, and the way it's being verified depends on the website. Usually, it will require something like a biometric prompt. So if you're on your phone, it will require you to put your fingerprint to verify that you. And then that's it. The passkey exchange, the cryptographic exchange will happen behind the scene, and you'll be logged in. So it's quite magical at the end of the day. It's like you're logging into a website without having to put a password or having to think about that motion we're so used to. So what I would encourage all the people on the call here is that if you haven't created Passkeys yet, go on one of those main websites. I mentioned Amazon, I mentioned Google, Apple, and so on. They all support Passkey. Give it a try. It will feel a bit awkward at first because you're not used to that mental model of not having a password. But then when you're used to it, it's really magical. You get into the website very conveniently. You don't have to remember about the fact that you have a passkey stored somewhere. And then, of
Or
course,
maybe
if
try it on a website that isn't your primary stuff, right? Because I mean, everybody, like their Google and Apple accounts are probably very central to what they do, and they're very concerned about messing that up. So, get some comfort first. You can go to a test website. If you just search for passkey test site, you can find passkey.org and webauthn.io and others, and like just try it there and see what it feels like. It'll walk you through the flow, and you get a little more comfortable with what it feels like to create a passkey or to use one. And then, so once you understand that, you can evaluate whether your threats and whether your use cases are something you feel comfortable moving over to make sure that you get that phishing protection and that ease of use.
Yeah, in practice, most of the main websites still support passwords, so you always have the fallback to
Yeah,
passwords in today's world. So you can feel confident that you're not going to get locked out of your
yeah, absolutely.
website and so on. But yeah, and
Enabling a passkey is different from disabling other stuff for sure.
yeah, exactly. By the way, if you're thinking about deploying passkeys in an organization or passwordless in an organization in a company, That's a bit different because then here you need to also like do a progressive rollout on the systems. To Christopher's point, I wouldn't do it on the most sensitive systems first, but do it with a plan progressively. Think about account recovery as well in those cases and so on. So it's a bit of a different story if you're consumer or corporate.
Yeah, yeah. So security and privacy have definitely come up. I'd love to just touch a minute on that. Um, Christopher, could you talk about sort of the technical and security standards that are behind this? Um, the concepts of sort of this new technology does feel a little new and out of control for some. So how can everybody feel better about what's going on?
Yeah, I think familiarity is really it, right? As you say, abracadabra, right? It's what's the magic word? It's a very easy concept. We each share a thing. I prove to you that I know it. Hopefully, it's the right you. And historically, humans were interacting face to face, so we have this concept of recognizing people again. But the internet erased the concept of distance and like, how can I know that this website is actually what I think it is? And am I supposed to like check the certificate and like understand that the name means this or it doesn't mean that or what it is internationally? It's just so complicated, the concept of identity, when you expand it to the whole world. So I think, again, I'll reiterate what I said a moment ago. Maybe I hope it's the right answer and what you were looking for. Familiarity is key. And when we say passkey, we're like, okay, well, what is that really? And Frederick and I just got finished saying, well, you can't see it. It just kind of works. Well, that doesn't really give you the kind of familiarity and trust that you need. I think the thing to know is that some of the smartest folks in the world are saying, hey, this is something that will actually protect you. And I don't want you to take their word for it. I want you to go and experience it and see what it feels like and see what you think about it, right? Maybe you don't want to use it with a biometric because some people don't like biometrics. Even like I got a YubiKey here that's got a biometric sensor on it. I use it because it's very convenient to me. All I have to do to log in is stick it in and touch it. It's fantastic. And I know that the biometric is only on this device. But some people think that, the devices are complicated and all my data is going to get stolen. And it's like, I don't have to do that. So I can use a pen. Try it out. See what you think. Ask questions. People want to help. We want that feedback. We want to make sure we're saying the right words, that we're hearing the kinds of concerns that people have, and that if there are any UX or even just confidence factors that people are worried about, we want to make that better. So give us feedback. We're listening as an industry. As Frederick said, there are 500 plus people in the FIDO Alliance working on this at the detailed technical level. And then we have many more working on it in the W3C, making web standards. So this works with websites seamlessly. And it's all the people you know about. It is Apple, it is Google, it is Microsoft, it's us. It's so many people trying to make sure that we make something that's great. Help us make it great, but go experience it. See what you think of it. Let us know.
So that great question. As things, no, I mean, great segue. So my next thing is the look ahead. So that was perfect. I mean, so much has changed already and so quickly just in 2025. Most websites are working on passkeys or doing passkeys. Businesses are exploring them. As we look forward, even just 1 year or even further, I'm curious, Fred, what do you see happening in this space?
Well, to your point, we just recently shared our Passkey report. We do a Passkey report every year to show the industry what's the progress. And year on year, the Passkey usage from attachment customers has doubled. So we're really seeing a lot of momentum into the Passkey usage. Most large websites now support Passkeys. So we're maybe not yet at the tipping point or the critical mass because it's still pretty new, but we're getting there. And I think we're going to see more and more adoption of Passkeys and passwordless behaviors both in the consumer world, but also in the work environment. And that means, to Christopher's point, that it's even more important for the industry to keep improving the solutions, keep improving the user experience, sort of cleaning up the rough edges that are coming from a new and nascent technology. We talked about interoperability, credential exchange, and the ability to be able to go from one platform to the other, import, export passkeys. It's important to have it on all platforms. It's not yet the case. And then it's going to be a long game. We know migrating to passwordless is going to take a lot more time than we hope, because we're so used to using passwords. It's been like what, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. I think the first password came out in the 1960s or something like this.
1960s, IBM mainframes.
Yeah.
Yep, MIT.
So it's going to take a lot of time to get to the other world, but the journey is on, the momentum is on. And if I look a bit further away, there's also things called digital verifiable credentials that are kind of the next step where we're going to start having driving licenses and your IDs in a digital way. But that's for the future for sure.
I saw some question here that I wanted to address. Somebody asked, when you create a passkey, does it use the same one for every website? And the answer is, it's actually a little surprising why the answer is what it is. The answer is that it's different for every website, and not even just for every website. For every time that you register on a given website, it would be different. So if you had 3 Google accounts and you created 3 different passkeys, they would all be different credentials. They don't have to be safe, because the public side is public, but they have to be for privacy. We wanted it to not be possible to link people, so that if you use the same public key everywhere, you could know maybe your first name over here and your full name over here and your address over here, and you link all that together via the public key. So FIDO from the beginning was a privacy preserving protocol. You create 1 passkey per account per website. And to that end, Frederick, you talked about digital verifiable credentials, and they're kind of an evolution of this technology. With a passkey, you create it and use it on the same website. So any information that is associated with that passkey is only associated with that passkey on that website. Verifiable credentials are kind of like, I just did a talk on this, and the analogy that seems to resonate is, you got your driver's license. Let's say that a lot of people are drivers here. I don't know, in Europe I don't drive at all. In the US I have to, but I've got an identity card from my government, and it's got all this data on it. And I just, like the thing in the news lately, I need to prove that I'm over 14 to access a social media site, right? And to date, normally what you do when you show your ID is you show the whole ID. It has your address on it. It has your birth date. It has a bunch of information that you don't actually need to share in order to be able to prove you're of age. And so we see problems with that. We're like, oh, upload your ID, upload your kid's ID, upload your kid's face. Oh my gosh, please no, right? Let's create a system that allows people to prove that they're over a certain age, or that they're a citizen of a given society or whatever, without disclosing everything to everyone. And verifiable digital credentials are even more complicated standards that allow this to happen, and they're complementary with passkeys. You can use the passkeys to, manage your wallet. You can use them to store your proofing keys and a YubiKey or something else. So that's an exciting part of the future, is that we want to extend this high security and high privacy protocol to be able to do more stuff that people actually care about.
Thank you. Given the time, I think let's move to Q&A. And what I'd love to do is ask, who was this? Who asked this one? We've been very focused on how great passkeys are. What are the downsides?
You have to manage them, is what I would say, right? I mean, if it's something you can remember, like just take passwords, right? What's the downside with password managers? Well, it creates this big complicated thing that's super safe. And then if I lose that, oh gosh, I'm in a situation where I have to go through some kind of recovery flow, and that can be quite painful. Same's true of passkeys. And then I think, as people have said, there are a couple of corner cases in the UX that we're still working on. What would you say, Frederick?
Yeah, to your point, you need to store your passkeys somewhere. So you need to find the right software or device to store them. And this needs to provide you the synchronization of your passkeys from one device to the other, or the same, the right level of security guarantee you want around this. So it's not magic either. Like, it's way better than passwords, and so that's why we're all around that webinar talking about passkeys and the importance of moving to passkeys. But it's not magic either. You still have something that you need to store. You need to be careful about the way you store it, and but at least that's the standard is structurally safer and secure and private by design. So for me, there's no reason why you shouldn't migrate to passkeys. We may see different type of attacks in the future. We may see maybe people trying to attack you at the account recovery level because they can't they can't steal the passwords. But I mean, that's a corner case and not what's happening today with phishing attacks. So
well, that's why you want to protect your Dashlane account with a security key, right? And that the recovery mechanism is also protected. Yeah. I would also say the oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, one question that's kind of coming up in several places is around portability. So does it travel with you if you log on to different PCs, or if you're logging on from different devices? So that's probably the first group of that.
This is something I wanted to talk about earlier, right? I talked about this biometric key earlier, and it really does provide a magical experience. When we first did this key, when FIDO2 came out with the concept of user verification to replace passwords, do passwordless, we showed an experience where I had an employee walk up to a laptop they'd never logged in before. They stuck their security key in, and they touched it, and they were logged into their entire corporate stuff right then and there. And what we just saw Dashlane demonstrate is it actually uses that same functionality, the encryption functionality that's been built in since FIDO2, to decrypt all of your passkeys. So the demo I did on stage, was it 2 weeks ago now, at the Authenticate conference, was I installed a brand new web browser instance, brand new account on a computer. I installed the Dashlane extension. I stuck in my security key. I touched the biometric sensor, and I have my passwords. I have my passkeys. All the ones that I'm willing to sync are just right there. So yeah, they'll travel with you.
Yes.
It's almost, you have to slow it down because it happens so fast. And people are like, "What just happened? Like, how is this? This doesn't feel safe." It like security has to feel painful. And I like to say that in the industry, I forget who coined this term, but it's the law of conservation of pain. So these things are complicated, and that means somebody has to do something complicated. And since we've been beating passwords with the same hammer for so long to make them safe, and doing this like multi-factor thing that again I'm somewhat embarrassed about. Like we said multi-factor is safe, but like it doesn't prevent phishing. That's great. So we've been putting the pain on the users. I think the really great thing about Passkeys is the user experience, despite like a couple of things here and there, is really great. It isn't like yelling you about using the wrong special characters or having the password be too long or whatever it is, right? It just works. And that pain is stuff that we are taking on as an industry. We're getting the browsers to take it on. We're getting the websites to take it on. We're getting the banks to take it on, the password managers, the security key vendors. We deserve to build this stuff in a way that's usable, and that's what makes it magical.
And I was mentioning the problem is that we're kind of hostage to our past mental model. The mental model where it's complicated to remember your passwords, complicated to log into. Oh, I forgot my password, so now I'm going to go through the forget password flow. That's all going away with the passkeys, but we need to get uncomfortably used to the fact that it's way secure, but it's also way more convenient.
Uh, Another set of themes that's coming through in some questions are around really that visualization. How do I know that I have passkeys? How do I visualize them? It's that speed in which it's happening. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah, so that's what let me
Yeah.
throw that out. Fred, do you want to take that
yeah, he
one?
should.
Yeah, in Dashlane, you have a passkey section along the passwords and everything else. So you can see all the websites where you have passkeys for. By the way, you can also rename them in case you have multiple passkeys for the same website for different usage. So, but you won't see the passkey itself because yet again, it's a cryptographic key, which doesn't make sense for you to see because you can't do anything with it. So you'll just see, okay, for Amazon.com, Frederick has a passkey, and that's it.
And the same's true when you look into that account. Like if you look at your Amazon account and you go to settings, the same way you can go like see the last time you changed your password and maybe change it again, you'll get like a list of passkeys. How many do you have? What did you call them? When did you register them? When's the last time you used them? So you can look in your password manager. You can look on the website itself where we're trying to use it.
I think it's interesting that so many of these questions really are still about the basic things that we all worry about, whether it's passkeys or it's passwords. It's about access, it's about knowing, remembering, and it is a little bit of a cultural shift to be able to totally and fully trust the organizations to, remember to sign us in. We're almost at time. I would just love to say any last words, Christopher?
Oh goodness! I mean, I look forward to seeing the follow-ups and seeing what all the questions were. I obviously can't follow them all in real time, but we do really care deeply about trying to protect people. I mean, you can see it in our bios. Hopefully, you can hear it in how we both talk about this. But I'm intensely curious what people in different backgrounds, from enterprise to personal, think about this stuff and how they're feeling about it as well, right? Because there's the feeling of safety, which is different from whether or not you're actually protected. And our hope is that we can do both in a very usable way.
Yeah. I think it's really about give it a try. If you have not used Passkeys yet, try. Give it a try. Provide feedback to the website you're trying the Passkey with. If you're in a corporate environment, you can also discuss with your IT team, your security team. They can actually provide feedback to the FIDO Alliance. They can even join the FIDO Alliance. You can participate to the whole story. So it's as an industry that we will make things better. As consumers, we need to move to Passkey so that everybody is safer and that we also remove the risk that is being used on an everyday basis by the attackers these days, like the malicious actors. Let's remove the phishing attack vector and we'll all be better for that. Like I see it a bit like vaccination campaigns. Like let's vaccinate ourselves and let's get rid of the disease.
Yeah, actually, given what you pulled up on screen, if some of you are interested in some of those more advanced future topics, this talk we did a couple of weeks ago where we did demo Dashlane, and then we went on to demo verifiable digital credentials with selective disclosure, zero knowledge proofs, and post-quantum signatures. If you're interested in more advanced stuff, go check that out. It's super interesting. Might be a little distracting for people that are still getting the hang of passkeys, but if you're looking for more advanced stuff, it's there.
Thank you, Christopher. There was actually a question about the impact on uh, quantum computing on in here. So
Yeah, I can. I mean, I can answer that very briefly. The cryptography that we use today
go for it.
is not post-quantum resistant in FIDO, but the protocol was designed to be what we call crypto agile. So we're able to swap out authentication algorithms as part of FIDO. And to date, we've had basically three major algorithms: the RSA algorithm, the ED25519 algorithm, and the NIST P curves as part of the FIDO signatures. But what we demonstrated in that video was showing the also NIST MLDSA signatures, which are post-quantum safe. So if you're interested in that stuff, check out the video. If this is all gobbledygook, I apologize, but hopefully that answered the person's question.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Christopher. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, everyone, for giving us your time. A couple of things. There are resources here. Also, in the chat, Fred did post a site for you to test passkeys. So check that out. We will be sending this recording out for anybody who joined late or wants to either slow down or speed up any parts. And really, thank you so much for your participation. I hope you all have a good rest of your day.